Dean Minchillo with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. The Dallas Center has joined us today to talk about drip irrigation basics during this water talk. So with that, Dean, I will hand it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Blake. And yeah, so the way I have my screen configured here is I cannot see if somebody puts their hand up or puts a question in the chat. So if there's any questions that come through, Blake, just stop me, and then we can address them right away, or we can hold them to the end. It doesn't matter to me. However you want to do that, but yeah,
Yeah,
I can.
I'll keep track of that.
Okay, yeah, I can only see my screen. So, okay, so how's everybody doing today? I hope well. Hopefully we've started to turn the corner for some more spring. Well, no, actually summer-like weather. I think the spring weather is the tricky stuff, right? That's when we get 80 degrees in the afternoon, and then a hailstorm and 40 degrees overnight, all in one time. So hopefully we start getting into some more summer-like temperatures. We're starting to see a lot of issues with warm season turf grass right now, just because of the goofy weather, and for some reason a lot of people have started fertilizing and watering a bit early this year. So we're starting to see a lot of brown patch and take all rot starting to establish in some of these lawns, but mild cases will start to dry out and start to correct themselves. So, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about drip irrigation, so which is a great tool for watering flower beds, planters, lots of different applications. Not quite the best tool for lawns. It can be very good for lawns, but is a little bit tricky to install. So we really see widespread application of this in smaller areas, plant beds, vegetable gardens, pots, that kind of stuff. But if you live in a relatively new house, like really anything probably built after like 2005-ish, chances are you have drip irrigation in your parkway strip, which is that little strip of grass between the curb and the sidewalk. So, one of the things with drip is it's just kind of, you don't really see it. You don't really know it's working. You don't really know when it's not working. So we'll go over a couple of things to kind of help with that. But yeah, when it's subsurface like that, you don't know anything. But that's part of the beauty of its efficiency as well. So here's the drought monitor. I always like to start these presentations with a little information about what's going on weather-wise here in Texas and around the United States. And as you can see, we're really not in terrible shape according to the drought monitor for our location. Right up there in north central Texas, you can see kind of the yellow area, which is just abnormally dry, kind of that first level of drought, starting to creep in a little bit, and of course very persistent up in the Panhandle and in central Texas. Those folks there are really getting hit with some serious drought conditions. It's very, very bad right now there. So we're looking pretty good. We're pretty lucky. I don't think we're where we would like to be, but we're not in too bad a shape. And then the United States as a whole, not too bad, right? So a little bit of drought hanging on there, kind of in the belt in the middle part of the country, California, and the West, which is usually under some pretty significant drought conditions, has cleared up quite a bit. Is looking pretty good. So hopefully we can continue that trend as we get into summertime. The seasonal outlook is always something that we should kind of pay attention to, although these do fluctuate and change. But when this one was issued, which was April 20th, This is the seasonal outlook for June, July, and August, which is kind of our bulk growing season. That's when we're really kind of the hottest, when really plants are transpiring the most and using the most water. As you can see, the seasonal temperature outlook is above average for most of the state, but right where we are, I mean, it's not quite as bad. It's above average, but not super above average, I guess you can call it, which is pretty good. I'll take that. I mean, any chance at having a somewhat mild summer, I'm I'm down with that. That's a wonderful thing. And then the precipitation outlook is we're still kind of in this equal chances mode. So they don't really have good, clear evidence or data to point whether we're going to be kind of more in a below average situation or an above average situation. So we kind of get lumped into this sort of, I don't know. Just think about that little phone emoji with the shoulders up and the hands up, right? That's kind of where we are right now with that. We just don't know, but that's better than being a solid below. So we'll take that. Anytime we can reduce the amount of irrigation that we're using on our lawns, it's going to be better. It's going to be better for the plants, and it's really going to be better for the water system as well. So, looking at the reservoir levels in Texas, mostly just highlighting this north central Texas region where we're located at. Again, not too bad, 88.2% full, right? I think last year we were a little bit higher than that going into this time of year. So a little bit down, but hopefully we'll get some more rains in and pick those reservoirs up before we head into summer. We still have really the whole month of May to go, and half of June before we really actually hit official summer. So I think we still have some time to improve those lake levels. We definitely want to go into summer with as much water in the reservoirs as we possibly can have, right? And this is the reason we don't want to start seeing a bunch of these notices popping up everywhere. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, we all of our drought restrictions that we have in the Metroplex are based on lake levels. And when those lake levels drop to a certain point, that triggers stage 1 or stage 2 or stage 3 of the drought contingency plan. And generally that is reduction in outdoor watering, which is okay. Most of our plant material can handle a stage 1, even a stage 2 situation, but we certainly don't want to get there if we don't have to, right? So we want to conserve, save water on the front end before we get there. But the one thing I really want to point out on this slide is if you look in kind of that upper right-hand corner, you'll see a few lines that are purple that are highlighted. And one of those, the last little line there says, water using a handheld hose, soaker hose, drip irrigation, or bubbler systems for up to 2 hours any day. So that is allowed to be done. So that's why drip irrigation is kind of a cool tool that we can use, because most of the entities or water providers around the Metroplex area do not restrict drip irrigation. It's a little bit of a tool to kind of get people to move towards a drip irrigation system for a lot of their plant material. And there's good reason for that, and we'll get into that here shortly. So, but it's definitely a nice little bonus feature that we have. And one of the reasons why drip is so good is because we don't really see scenes like this with drip irrigation. Right during the summertime, we probably 60, maybe even almost 70% of all the water we use is used for irrigation purposes, right? So that's the exact same water that we cook, clean, bathe, flush our toilets with. It is all the same treated water, but we're dumping a lot of that on our lawns in the summertime. And according to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Association or Agency, I'm sorry, they have done a bunch of studies, and what they've come up with is that at least 50% of that water that we use outdoors is wasted. And I can absolutely see that. I don't know how many times you see watering going on in the middle of the afternoon when it's really hot out, or during a rainstorm when there's actually water going, and then of course all the broken sprinklers and the overspray and that stuff. And a lot of times that is it's because we don't really see those things running very often. Right, so as a homeowner, our sprinkler systems will either run early in the morning when we're still asleep, or they'll come on after we've already left the house, maybe to go to work or to go do something. So sometimes we don't actually see those things until we're alerted of them when they're broken. But with drip irrigation, you don't really see those types of conditions because it is a much slower application rate and it is below the surface, right? So it would sit underneath the grass or underneath the mulch, delivering water right to the plant roots. So just going over a little bit why we want to actually use drip. So and drip gets kind of a bad rap from some people. Some people love it. It's a mixed bag of emotions when it comes to drip irrigation. But bottom line is it is the most efficient way that we have to water our plants, right? So it's going to deliver water slowly right at the root of the plant. And when we think about our soils, which the majority of soil profiles we have in the Metroplex is going to be heavy clay. So that Houston black clay, that's actually the state soil is Houston black, and it has a really, really slow infiltration rate. So if you've ever dug a hole and then filled it up with water, you know how long it takes for the water to drain out of that soil. So it's that when we try to apply a bunch of water, like from an overhead sprinkler system, like something that puts out 2 or 2.5 gallons per minute onto some soil that may have an infiltration rate of 1/4 of an inch an hour, that's an imbalance there, right? So, but if we're using drip irrigation, we're doing gallons per hour, not gallons per minute. So we're really, really applying that water really slowly right at the soil surface. So we should be able to get that water into the soil, down deep into the soil where the plant roots can actually use it. It is very efficient. So it has probably around a 90% efficiency, which is saying that percentage of the water is actually making it to its target, which is the plant. When you look at an overhead sprinkler or your standard type of sprinkler system, an efficiency of 40 or 45% in a standard irrigation system is actually really good. Okay, so that's almost 60% waste in that, and that's going to be due to wind drift, misadjusted heads, just water not hitting the target, right? Only a portion of it is actually making it to the plants where we want the water to be. And then also there's no runoff with drip necessarily. You can run it long enough to where it saturates the soil and runs over the curb or runs out of the plant bed. That is for sure. But generally, we don't see that. We don't really see a lot of that type of waste with drip irrigation. So, hence the reason why it is generally allowed any time of the year or any time, even under drought restrictions. And part of that is also because they use drip systems to water foundations, and nobody wants to be responsible for anybody's foundation. Even homeowners don't want to be responsible for their own foundation. So this way that you're in control of your own destiny on your foundation with your drip system. But that is the means that that engineers like to use to keep the soil saturated around house. So like I said, there are pros and there are cons to all of this. The pro is definitely saving water. You're not pushing water up into the air to be drifted off by wind or evaporated off into the atmosphere. You're keeping it low, keeping it close to the plant roots. It doesn't put as much water out, so there's not as much nutrient leaching through the soil as you can get with a regular sprinkler system. Again, we're talking gallons per hour with drip irrigation instead of gallons per minute, right? So it's super flexible. You can use it anywhere. You can bend it. You can corner it. You can do all kinds of different things with it. And you can really get it to fit in an odd shape where you might not be able to get a regular type of sprinkler head to work without spraying on something or overspraying somewhere. You can get it to where it puts out a pretty even distribution of moisture, and that's going to be all depend on how it's laid out, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then, of course, like I mentioned before earlier, with large patch and take all starting to become evident, and that is because moisture is sitting on the leaf surface of the turf grass for a lot longer now with kind of our cooler temperatures and our moisture in the air. We're seeing a lot more moisture sitting on the surface of the plant, and that can go for anything. That can go for shrubs, that can go for perennials, any type of plants. They don't generally like their leaves to be wet. So drip irrigation completely avoids the wetting of those leaves. So you can reduce disease for sure in that. So and then also you can use drip like a point source type of drip where you've got little emitters that go to each individual plant. Like say you want, or you have a Mediterranean style type of garden, right, where you just have some plants that are just individual ornamental plants, and then you have decomposed granite or rock or something like that. Then you don't really need to water all of the soil all around all of those plants, right? That's not necessary. You're just promoting weed growth in those situations. So you can use drip to actually just put water at each plant that you need. And of course, that is huge in Arizona, California, Utah, places in the pretty good arid West where they have those desert style landscapes like that, or Mediterranean style, however you want to call it. But of course, with everything good, there's some bad, right? So it can be expensive to install just because it is time intensive. It is a little bit labor intensive. And if you're doing it on turf grass, then it's definitely going to be a laborious task because a lot of the grass is going to have to come up. They do require maintenance, right? It's not trouble-free. It is not set it and forget it, especially if it's in a plant bed that you're actively doing things in. A shovel, like one stab of a shovel, and you can cut a pretty good break in the line, and now you've got a leak that you need to repair. So and then there's also flushing of it every once in a while, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And then of course, it is not really the best application for plants that root shallow, right? So such as like your ground covers, your jasmine, some of those things. Drip's not always the best solution there, just because you're putting the water down onto the soil and you're pushing it down maybe past the root zone in some instances. And then also the roots can grow onto the drip line and make it difficult to work with and change. So not always the best solution for those types of things. So the basic system is pretty straightforward, right? It's not a whole lot of different than any other irrigation system. If y'all are familiar with how your irrigation systems are installed, not everybody is. It's kind of a mystery to some folks because everything is happening underground, but you're going to have a water source, right? So, and that can be from your irrigation system. That can also be from a faucet, like a hose bib or a rain barrel. I mean, anything like that. You can use drip in all of those situations. So you're going to have your water source. You may have a meter or a pump. If you're using rainwater collection, then you may have a pump to kind of bring the pressure up on it. But you will for sure have to have a pressure regulator, right? The backflow device, maybe not quite necessary. If you're tapping into your irrigation system, if you're coming off of your main line, then you have to have that backflow device. But if you're converting a station in your irrigation system, then you probably don't need the backflow device. If you're connecting to a faucet for like a vegetable garden or anything like that, then you do have to have a backflow preventer on your faucet. You can buy them for like 25 bucks. They just screw onto the end of the hose bib. So we're trying to keep water from moving back into the main line. But you're definitely going to need a pressure regulator because the pressure for a sprinkler system is like 30 to 40 psi is generally what's good for a regular sprinkler system. For a drip system, it's like 5 or 10 psi, right? I mean, it's pretty low. So we're definitely going to have to bring the pressure down so we're not blowing everything apart and blowing the joints and couplings apart. So, and then you'll probably want some kind of filter for sure, especially if you're using water out of a rain barrel, you're going to want some kind of filter because the emitters are really, really small on this stuff. Like I have some here. I don't know if you can see this or not, but you can see the little emitter right there. That's really, really small. And when the system turns off, there's a natural little bit of back pressure that happens, and that can suck dirt and debris into those little emitters. So we definitely want to keep it clean on that end. But if you're using captured rainwater, then you can also get bits of stuff coming off of the roof going into your collection tank, and now you're trying to push dirt and debris the other way through the emitter. So definitely a filter for sure. And then your zone valves, I mean, pretty much like any other type of irrigation system. And I'll show you some examples of how you can set up different zone valves in here. So the parts are relatively available in all kinds of different places, everywhere from your big box stores to your local irrigation house. Now, I always recommend that if you're going to do a system, that you buy everything together, right? So if you're going to do Rainbird parts, you buy all Rainbird parts. If you do all Hunter parts, you buy all Hunter or all Toro, right? And it helps to buy it all in the same place. My recommendation is always go to your irrigation center, your supply house. There's a number of them around, Site One, Longhorn, Ewing. I mean, they're all over the Metroplex, lots of different ones. But cautionary tale is just make sure you know what you want, right? Like put your list together of all the things you want. If you know your sizes, if you know everything you need, make sure you have that list before you go in there because they can be kind of grumpy sometimes and they don't really have time to help you build out your whole entire system and then get all the parts for you. So make sure you have a pretty good idea of what it is that you want. So the picture on the left is a zone control valve specifically for drip irrigation, right? That has a pressure regulator built into it, and it also has a filter. That little part that's coming out to the right, that's your micron filter. So that is, all those things are built in to it. So it's all one unit. You knock a lot of stuff out all with one deal. So I highly recommend that. The one in the middle, that is a Rainbird converter. So you can convert a regular spray head to drip irrigation. I have one right here. If you can see that, you can get either a splitter that goes both directions, or you can use a single one. But what's kind of cool about this is you can go 200 feet any distance off of each point. So with this, you can essentially go 400 feet with that, and you just replace a sprinkler head with it. So it's got pressure regulator built into it, super easy, super simple to use. And then you can get other kits too if you want to do like potted plants or point source, where you have little smaller emitters. And that Rainbird converter comes in like a little paper plastic kit like this. This one is the 1800 Retro. So I don't know how much they are. I don't think they're very expensive. But that's a great way to convert an existing overhead spray irrigation system to drip. So and all of this stuff is pretty readily available here. Here you can see an installation of the retrofit system in a bed. That was a spray head that was right there, like a pop-up spray head. That is now drip tubing, and then the other spray heads that were in that bed are now capped off. So anything beyond that kind of 200 foot range on either side would have another one of these converters on it, right? So like I said, you can go 200 feet on either side. So it's really easy. It's a really simple way to upgrade to drip irrigation especially in your flower beds. So again, kind of here's all the bits and pieces that you'll want to do if you're going to hook it up to a hose bib, like an outside. And this is a really popular way that people will do for vegetable gardens. Absolutely simple way to do it. You just get a splitter. Well, you get a backflow preventer, and then you can get a splitter on there, so you can have one side for your garden hose and the other side you can have hooked up to your drip irrigation system. A couple of different versions here, one with the micron filter right off of the backflow, just a straight shot through it, and then the other one using a splitter and a timer, right? So you can get these timers that are solar powered, battery powered, and then you can set it up just like your sprinkler system, where it's going to come on automatically and run. Super easy, tons of those available as well. In all kinds of different forms or fashions. You can get them as simple as like just a dial, like an egg timer, right? Or you can get them where they're completely digital, or and Bluetooth, where you can operate the whole thing from your phone. So any way you want to go with that, that's all out there. So you'll have your backflow device, you'll have your pressure regulator on there, you'll have some kind of adapter, right? Because you have to have a connection to actually attach the tubing to the water source. So that'll be your adapter that they have right on there. So, and there's, like I said, it's really pretty easy. There's a whole lot of things you can do with it. There's not a whole lot of rules, but really to save yourself a lot of headaches, a lot of time, a lot of frustration, is make sure you're sticking with one manufacturer, right? So this is, I believe, the Rainbird or Netafim maybe tubing, this kind of brown color. So, and it is 17 millimeter tubing, right? So if you order a bunch of fittings off of Amazon that are 17 millimeter, well, maybe they're not really 17 millimeter. Maybe they're 16.5, right? And they work, but maybe they don't work good enough. Maybe they're going to eventually start to pop off. Definitely, like, everything is made to fit together. So stick with your name brand stuff. If you're going to use, like I said, Rainbird, stick with Rainbird. You can do Hunter, stick with Hunter. Just keep it all the same. It'll save yourself a lot of headaches down the line. So you can get solid tubing, right, with no emitters on it. And this is great if you need to, maybe you have two beds that you're connecting, right? So you have one bed that you have drip irrigation in, and then you've got kind of like a sidewalk or a little patio that you've got to go under to get to another bed, right? Then you can use solid tubing, so you're not actually watering the soil underneath the patio. You can just use that solid tubing to go underneath there. So that's what that's for. Generally, short runs, not more than like 100 feet. Not more than like 25 or 30 feet on those. probably keep it pretty short with the solid tubing. And then the drip line, of course, there's all kinds of different emitter um, amounts, like gallons per hour, spacings, and we'll get into that shortly. And then also there's what we call the spaghetti tubing or the 1/4 inch tubing, which is what you would use to put a little emitter on for maybe a specific plant that you want to water, or maybe a pot or something like that. You can attach those in between those emitter orifices on this tubing, right? So, I mean, like I said, almost anything is possible.
Hey,
Um,
Dean,
yeah,
we have a couple questions that came in.
yeah.
Uh,
Let's grab them.
will you back up a couple slides?
More.
Yeah, right there.
Yep.
First question is, can you add a quick connect to that?
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm sure you could. You just have to get it sized right. That would be the thing. So what I see a number of people do is they'll have their backflow device, they'll have their filter, and then their pressure regulator, and then they'll have PVC pipe that will connect to all of that. That will run to the garden or to the bed or whatever. But you could definitely get a quick connect that would go onto PVC pipe. So yeah, I think you can do it. Just have to size it right.
okay, and another question. If you install a conversion head like the Rainbird you showed, is
Yeah.
it necessary to cap all the other standard heads in the zone? Or can you have the drip converted head running in the zone along with regular heads all at once?
Right. No, you do not want to do that, right? Because remember, drip is putting water out in gallons per hour, right? Whereas your spray heads are putting out gallons per minute. Okay. So when you mix those two, there's a good chance something is going to get overwatered and or something is going to get underwatered just because of that discrepancy. It is preferable. I mean, you can do it. I'm not going to say you can't. There's no rules, right? You, it's not preferable, is what I should say, to do that. It's really better to not mix those devices if you can get away with it. And I know there's a lot of older irrigation systems out there where you have, one zone is half spraying shrubs in a plant bed, and then the other half is spraying on the lawn, and you want to get the spray heads out of the plant bed, and that can be a little bit problematic to do that. But it's an expensive conversion if you have to try and split that zone between the two. So I understand there's times when it's just not practical to isolate, but generally, yeah, don't do it if you can. That's the best rule with them.
All right, and this last question that's similar to the last one.
Mhm.
Do you need a pressure regulator on the Rainbird converter if you're running regular spray heads elsewhere on that zone?
Uh, no, the Rainbird converter has a regulator in it, so it's already going to bring the pressure down at this location for this. So yeah, it shouldn't matter on the other ones. The other ones, hopefully, the other ones are already pressure regulated. Um, or the system is designed to where the pressure is appropriate on your other heads. You're really just worried about where the drip connection is, and this body has a pressure regulator built into it. So yeah, you should be okay there.
All right,
Is
we can
that
move on.
is that it?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So like I mentioned before, using the drip tubing that doesn't have emitters in it, you can get this more flexible tubing, right? If you've got a lot of turns and bends, because this tubing it's not real. Like I mean, it's kind of stiff. It's not real flexible, right? But you can get a more flexible poly tube that you can use as well um, for moving around a yard, going into like some tight areas. And then you can also, with this flexible tubing, you can poke emitters into it and have your spaghetti tubes coming off of it as well. And you can get this in 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch tubing. The 3/4 inch tubing is going to be if you really have a long run and you want to push a lot of water through it. Like say you're going all the way across a yard, maybe you're going 70, 80 feet or something, and you're definitely going to probably want to go with that 3/4 inch tubing just so you can get that flow rate going across the yard for sure. Another option, which I didn't bring a sample of, is what they call funny pipe. That's the pipe down at the bottom. It is a more denser, more rubbery type of pipe. You can run this about 25 or 30 feet, ideally in a yard. But this is another great way to bridge the gap between two drip systems or something, is you can use this funny pipe, and it goes together real easy rather than using PVC pipe where you need a PVC pipe cutter, PVC pipe glue and fittings and all of that stuff. You can use this funny pipe. It's really really simple to use and good for various applications. Now, but with the funny pipe though, you cannot poke emitters and into that pipe. It is too thick. It is too dense, right? So you just can't do it. You probably could, but it's going to be really, really hard, really difficult. So I wouldn't advise doing it unless you've got a really bad situation where you've got a lot of like sharp teeth critters that are chewing into your line all the time. Then maybe at that point you'd want to try and use it, but I wouldn't advise it. It could be a frustrating task to do that. So. All right, so here's just a couple of more images of some of the micro emitters that are available out there. You can see the picture in the top left. All those different colors are different flow rates for those little emitters. It's still all gallons per hour. Everything's gallons per hour, but they're just going to flow a little bit differently. And you can set it up to where it just drips right out of that emitter, or you put a little piece of 1/4 inch spaghetti line off of that and run it to another emitter somewhere into a pot or to a plant. And then you've got like in the middle there, that's kind of almost like a little bubbler that puts out a pretty good just kind of pour of water. Then you have these little micro spray ones that have different spray patterns for different things, and those are good to use if you have like some tropical plants, because you kind of want to create a little bit of a humidity area so for the plant. So those little micro spray ones work really good for that. And there's just so many options. It can actually be a little bit overwhelming how many options are available. So you just really need to pick whatever works best for you, and you can mix and match all of these, right? So again, there is no rules on this. There's not one that's going to have a different precipitation rate that's going to be so different than the other one that you can't mix and match them. So if you need 4 or 5 different types of micro sprayers or emitters in one plant bed, then go for it. You can do it. It's not a deal breaker. It's actually preferred, because then you're really delivering the right amount of water to each individual plant, and you're not starving one plant to feed another plant because of your emitters that you have. So and we need to match these up with soil type. Okay, like I said before, pretty much clay is what we have. There are some pockets of sand, but what you can see, what happens is on this little chart is we get a lot of good lateral movement with our clay, right? So that water will move outwards in the soil, whereas in the sand, we don't really get that lateral movement. We just get pretty much movement straight through the sand. So So you'll want your emitters a lot closer together in a sandy soil because you just don't have that capillary action. Now in the clay soil, you can space those apart. So generally 12 to 18 inches apart is reasonable for clay soil. And it also kind of depends on what you're watering, right? So if you're watering a vegetable garden, then you might want them a little closer together because you're going to need a little bit more saturation. If you're watering a bunch of woody perennials like lantanas and natives and that kind of stuff, then probably the 18 inches might be good enough. You can go to 24 inches, but that might be stretching it a little bit. But you know that's going to be it's going to be situation dependent. Me personally, the 24 inches I think is just a little bit too far apart. What we generally see here is 12 or 18 inch spacing. All right, connectors. If you're going to have a drip system, you need a lot of these connectors, right? So you're going to need tons of these. You need some T's, you're going to need some elbows, you're going to need all kinds of different ones because this is also how you're going to connect pieces together. Or if you get a break in the line, if you get a break in the line, you're going to have to cut it and then put one of these straight line connectors in between to put the two pieces together. So definitely going to want a lot of these. Whenever you buy your stuff, make sure you just go ahead and tell the supply house guy, hey, I need like a bag of each of these connectors because you're going to want to have plenty on hand. And then there's different little valves you can get. So where you can isolate zones, you can turn them on and off. This is really great for a vegetable garden, especially a raised bed garden. Say you want to water one row, 3 times a week, and you only want to water 2 other rows like once a week, then you can do that with these little simple ball valves that just turn on and off. Again, different types of connectors. You can get the kind that like on the right there where you push into the line. And then they have these other ones, these like quick connect ones where it has like a little grabber inside the sleeve. So you're pushing them into the sleeve and then they don't come apart once they come apart. So a couple of different options. Obviously, the ones on the left are a lot more expensive than the ones on the right. So just keep that in mind if that's the direction you want to go. A lot easier to work with because this tubing, when it's cold, it's really, really difficult to work with. So definitely keep that in mind too. Don't install any of this stuff in the wintertime. Right? It's definitely like a summertime chore for sure because you want that line to get warm and heated up. So I talked about one of the downsides to drip is you don't really know when it's working. And this is a kind of a crutch for a lot of people. It's because for it to work appropriately, for it to do what it needs to do, right, it needs to be underneath the surface of something. It needs to be on the soil surface and then covered over with either plant material or mulch, right? Like if you have the drip sitting on top of the mulch, like the picture on the right, then that little drip, that little 0.6 gallons per minute or per hour has to make its way through the mulch. So as you can tell, you're going to get some evaporative loss before the water makes it to the soil. So probably going to have to run it a little bit longer period of time if it's not covered over. So, but one of the things that you can do is you can get an indicator, right? So I don't know if you guys can see this, a little like piece of 1/4-inch tubing, and then it just poked right into your drip line. So this would go kind of at the end of your drip system, and when it's turned on, right, then this little shaft is up, and a little bit of water is going to come out of there, and that's going to tell you that you're getting flow all the way through your system. So you don't have a break anywhere, you don't have a blockage. Water is making it all the way through the system. There's a bunch of these different varieties out there. You can some are pop up, some are like a little flag that pops up. Just all kinds of different things. But that is a really, really easy way to be sure that you can have a visual check on your drip system to make sure that it's working appropriately. And then the picture on the right really is kind of showing a flush valve, a simple flush valve. You can buy complicated flush valves that have a valve that you actually open up or a knob, but with this thing, it's just pretty simple. Basically, it's just a threaded end that will go onto a piece of blank tubing, and then a little PVC pipe cap. So this is a 1/2 inch. So you just thread it on like this. And if you ever want to drain it or purge it, which you might want to do every once in a while just to get debris out of it, then all you have to do is just unscrew it, turn on your system, the water is going to come out, and then you put your cap back on. You can do it with that's a 1/2 inch. I have a 3/4 inch one here too. It's the same thing, it's just a little bit bigger. Real simple way to make a little valve there, so you can drain your system when you need to. Stakes, buy lots of stakes because the tubing will actually push up over time, just various reasons, and it'll push up out of the mulch. So you'll want to stake it back down so you can get just all kinds of different stakes. Is the flat top one. You can get round ones, whatever you want. But just make sure you're staking, and when you're laying it out, I think the recommendation is every 12 inches to put a stake. But honestly, if you can do it every 6 inches, that's going to be better because you really want to hold it down to the ground so it's not popping up, creating a tripping hazard, or just looking bad as it heaves up through the mulch. And then a cutter. You're going to need a cutter. Okay, so here's my dirty cutter right here. But this makes real easy work out of tubing. And I'm gonna try and cut this for you guys so you can see, but just real simple like that. Ooh, that was loud. So yeah, I mean, these aren't very expensive either, but definitely get something like that to cut with. One of the other things too is when you're installing this type of drip tubing, if it's warm outside, then roll it out and lay it out in the sun and let it get hot. As it gets hot, it'll get softer, and then it's a lot easier to work with. When it's soft, it's a lot easier to put these two pieces together and get everything joined up. If it's kind of cold outside, then you can use like a little propane torch, and you can just heat up the line. Don't heat it up too long because you don't want to melt it. You can just kind of warm it up with the torch, put the pieces together, and then as it cools, it'll shrink into place and fit really good. So here's a couple of examples of how some systems are laid out. You can see this one on the far left. You see down at the very bottom, they have a little ball valve with the green valve on there. So they can turn that end of the system off when they don't want to water those plants. And of course, they've got little point source emitters going to each of their plants. While they're small and little, they don't want to water in between them. They just want to water the plant itself. The middle one got like a little micro spray head that's going to spin. That little top thing spins, so it's going to spray some water out on those plants. And then more point source emitters there with the little short run of the 1/4 inch tubing into some black poly line. So great way to do it for potted plants, small vegetable. You probably don't want to bury the poly line for long runs in the yard because it's not as durable as like the brown color drip tubing. That's going to be more durable to be underground. So keep that in mind. And then the bottom one is kind of just the layout of a plant bed going in. They've got some kind of looks like succulent type of plants there and some rocks, and then they're going to lay it all out, stake it down, and then they're going to put some mulch on top of that drip tubing, so it'll be right there watering those plants. A couple of other layouts here. You can see the bottom right. You can see how they're covering up the tubing with the mulch. gridded up for like a turf grass installation there on the bottom left and those straight runs. You can see how that water is moving out, right? You can see that capillary action there with that water. And then this is a vegetable garden installation that we have at the Dallas Center. You can see that in this instance, they used PVC pipe for a header and then ran their tubing off of their drip tubing off of that PVC pipe header with a little valve so they can turn each of these beds on and off as they want to water. And then this way they can just move those lines out of the way, till or weed or do whatever they need to do, and then lay those lines back into place. So a really good way to do it for a more permanent type of application in a large garden like what this one is, Dr. Masabni's garden at the Dallas Center. Really good to use for trees. Probably better than bubblers because you're getting more water. You can get it out towards the drip line of the tree where the water really is necessary for root uptake. And of course, you can read all of this information on there, but I like to use drip for trees. I think it's a better application than the bubblers. And then, of course, how much do I need to run my drip system? There are a bunch of calculators out there. This calculator is from Rainbird. You can pull it up online. My picture is a little bit fuzzy, but basically you're just running down the line there. I've got 12-inch spacing, 12-inch spacing rows, and using a 0.6 gallon per hour emitter, I'm putting out almost a gallon per inch of water there. So pretty good rate, right? Less than a spray head, right? But a pretty good rate. Here's another one from Penn State that pretty much is breaking down your gallons per hour to gallons per minute for you, so you can kind of calculate run time a little bit better. So low flow is probably going to be like 3 gallons per minute. Medium flow would be gallons per hour. Medium flow would be like a 5 or 6 gallons per hour, and high flow would be 9 or 0.9 or 1 gallon per hour. And as far as this chart goes, and you can kind of follow that across and see how many gallons per minute per 100 feet that you're really actually applying with your drip, which comes in handy when we're going to get into setting up run times here in a minute. So, but this is obviously the easiest one. This is from Washington State University, and you can actually just look this up. There's the link there on the top, and you can put in whatever you have. You put in your emitter flow rate, you put in your spacing, you put in your distance between lines, and you hit calculate, and it gives you your inches per hour application rate. And then if you want to convert that to gallons per minute, you just run the calculation there. There, that's on the left, and you see 0.96 gallons per minute. So we're still half of what a sprinkler head puts out, but we're getting a little bit closer if you need to combine those two systems for something. So, and then I throw this calculation in there. This is a runtime calculator. This is gonna help you establish how long do I need to run it for to set your controller, right? So you did the other stuff. You have your precipitation rate, which is what you need. The only other piece you need is what is your watering requirement, right? So if it's like half an inch a week, then you've got it set up so you know how long you need to run it to get that 0.96 inches. Right, so we're looking at 31 minutes per week to run that. And then you can break it down into a cycle and soak situation, which I always recommend. And then do cover it with mulch, right? That's going to be the most effective way to get it to work. Here is a little chart so you know how much mulch to buy when you go to the store. So you just need to know your square footage. And then it breaks it down into bags, right? So for you. So if you're buying 1 or 2 cubic foot bags, you know how many bags you actually need to get a yard or a yard and a half or 2 yards of mulch. So super handy, so you can get the right amount the first time. You have to make multiple trips back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Um, so that's it for me. Is my contact information here. Feel free to shoot me an email or leave me a message uh, with any questions you have. I'm always happy to help out.